don't really know how this is going to go.
You can tell us what you've got planned.
Alrighty, welcome to Veeam Product Strategy Live. This is episode number 3. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for the support actually for the last 3 episodes, even including the pilot. We've had some really good feedback. We've had some great viewage on viewage. Is that even a word? We've had some great viewage on YouTube. So thanks for that, and looking forward to continuing today. Got my usuals on. We got David Hill, Melissa Palmer, and special guest today, not Michael Cade, Dave Russell, who's a great friend of ours and love having him as part of our product strategy team. But Dave, do you want to give a quick introduction into yourself and what you do for those people that may not know?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So I get the privilege actually to work with all of you on the product strategy team, look after enterprise advancement in particular, the enterprise market and Veeam going further in that market. Really just a kind of a lifer and backup now these last going on 32 years.
Yeah, there you go. And thanks for joining. I think
Dave also has the coolest office background without putting a fake one.
That's not a fake Zoom background either. So yeah, that is real. People are getting creative, but that's actually real. Actually, I remember when you first, so I was in Japan. I remember very vividly when you just started, there was a bit of it was almost a disaster of a all hands call that we did for Veeam. I don't know if you remember that one specifically, but I was in Japan at the time. And you came on, and I think you had been told to talk like about 5 minutes before the actual meeting itself. So you kind of rushed. But I remember the background and going, this guy could be okay. He's got some cool stuff going on. So, and that proved.
Well, the other thing I remember about that is I was told that it was going to be audio. So I had landed about 1 a.m., gotten back, off of the plane back when we were doing that kind of thing. So I had like a t-shirt on, hadn't shaved, got on like this. I said, turn on your camera. I said, what are you talking about? I ran upstairs, put on more of a proper shirt, ran back down.
Doesn't matter what you've got below the belt.
You mean you were kind of dressed nice and scruffy like I am today with the hat on and...
Actually, I saw you last week. You two, David and David did something online last week.
Yeah, LinkedIn Live.
Yeah, and David like dressed up.
Yeah, we both showered and shaved. It was really kind of a special day.
Very strange. Did my hair. I've kind of given up now. It's getting that long. It's actually curling over my ears. I really need the hairdressers to open now.
I actually look like I've got hair, so I'm quite happy with this whole situation.
You do. Yeah. You're not dyeing it now, right?
No, I'm not dyeing it. No. I don't dye
no, he wakes up every morning and puts Miracle Grow on it.
Just don't give away the secrets, man. All right, let's move on. Okay, so episode 3. So we've talked about a few general topics, but what I wanted to sort of have an open discussion about today was technology acceleration. And what I mean by that is, in times of worldwide change and crisis like we're in today, typically what's happened in the past is that it's accelerated technological advances because there's been absolute reason and requirement for it. So I think, back to the last century, which we're all born in, we can say that the 21st century or 20th century into 19Xs, World War I, World War II happened. World War I, there's a real massive acceleration in automobiles and tanks and sort of vehicle warfare, which led to a revolution in cars and automobiles and whatnot. And we look at World War II, apart from everything obviously that happened, the advancements in science, that was the race to be the best at the time, to get an upper hand in that particular situation. You think of the Manhattan Project. I watched a documentary on that last week. And then you think about even things like, the Enigma code machine. From a computing perspective, computing went dramatically quicker because of this situation, because it needed acceleration. We think of microwave technology, all that kind of stuff, was born out of necessity because people were looking to get a one-up in a bad situation. And when we think about what's happening today, I think, what we've seen in the past 2 months already, has it been 2 months yet? I think it's probably been a bit longer for some, but feels like longer. But, we've seen people use technologies in different ways. And almost to a certain extent, the whole world has been forced to use technology that has been there before, but hasn't really been widely accepted. This is a great example of it. Everybody jumps on a video call these days without thinking twice. Everyone's Zooming or getting onto Microsoft Teams or whatever it might be. If you're still using Cisco WebEx or whatever it is. But people turn on the videos first. We've talked about this before. But realistically, what happened is people got dragged into that situation because they had to. So this is what we want to talk about over the next 20 to 30 minutes, is just to have a bit of an open discussion about what we think this period of time is going to lead to in the next sort of 2 to 3 to 10 years. And then also we're going to wrap it up by tying it back to our industry that we work in, technology, and specifically backup. And having backup Dave on the call is going to be great for that. So probably start with David talking about, like, what's your thoughts on this situation?
Uh-oh.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting when you tie it in with like World War One, World War Two, and we look at it that way. If you think back, certainly World War Two, I spent more time looking at history, and we learned about it at school more than we did World War One. And the thing that always struck me was how nations came together. And if you think back to World War Two, you had all the men fighting in the trenches, and you literally had all the women back home building Spitfires, doing all this kind of stuff that in them days was typically seen as a male job. But the nation came together to do it. And if you look at the situation now, what I find very interesting when you look at the UK and the US, all these companies are not just the Fords and the General Motors and your General Electrics, but mid-sized companies are doing all they can to help people. And I read this interesting article yesterday about back in my hometown. These two guys run a small company producing like nightgowns and things like that for the hospitals. Well, they switched gears and they've been making all these face masks, PPE equipment, everything. And rather than just saying, right, okay, we want to charge an extortionate amount because the government's desperate and we know they'll pay it, they gave it all away free. And they're not rich guys, you know, they're small business, but it's that kind of thing that I've found amazing when we look at this. Because up until probably a few months ago, I think the world was becoming more and more selfish and more self-centered. And all of a sudden, everyone switched gears and started focusing on what can we do to help society? What can we do to essentially save our country and protect our vulnerable people? I think that's a big thing to take out of this.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I know that down here in Western Australia where I am, we've got a wine industry in the south. So we've got a lot of people that traditionally created and produced wine, but more recently they turned their hand to distilling. And so they were distilling and making gins and bourbons and that sort of stuff. And and I think this has happened across the world, where effectively those guys have retrofitted or changed the programming of their distillery machines to create sanitizer, because it's alcohol based. I've seen that quite a bit around the world, and that's a great example of industries pivoting quite quickly to help. And you think about 3D printing, like everyone's trying, all these 3D printers that people have been buying. You know, I don't think your standard at-home 3D printer is going to help too quickly, but the guys that bought those higher-end 3D printers to do what they want to do, they turn themselves to those masks and whatnot. So you're right, people have kind of dropped tools, assessed what they have at their disposal, and actually pivoted to try and help the situation. It's that area of togetherness.
Yeah, one of my friends has a 3D printer, and he's made, I think, 200. Hi, Dan, how are you? He's made 200 of the things that you put the face shields in, like the head thingies that the visor piece goes into. So he's been like 3D printing those like they're nothing.
And is he just a normal type of guy?
Well, he's an engineer, but yeah, pretty.
Engineers are normal.
This wasn't his line of work, right? This was like a hobby thing, and now he's really
It's
made
his fun
this
3D printer, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Kat, everybody knows Katarina, right, from Virtual Design Master and VMware community. She had something on Facebook the other day where she's been sewing bags for NHS workers for them to put their, gowns and stuff in to be washed. So I guess the idea is you just put all their stuff in the bags, throw all the bags in and wash them, so you don't have to worry about contamination when traveling. So yeah, there's a lot of just normal people out there too, just doing what they can to help.
And what about technology, Melissa? Have you seen any examples of technology outside of the PPEs and
here's what
stuff?
I think is different, because we were just talking, we opened this with innovation, right? And you gave it 2 examples that really stood out for me: Manhattan Project, right, and Enigma Machine are both very physical, right? They're devices that you have to build. Whereas I think in the world of today, computers, yeah, there's definitely innovation things keep on getting faster, quicker, more capacity, all that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much on a set scale. It's just going to keep increasing, right? I don't think that's where we're going to see. I think we're going to see the innovation in the software that runs on them, right? So, hate to use the example of Zoom, but
no, Zoom's a great
there
example,
were some
actually.
issues with Zoom, right? And how fast did they get out a software patch to change stuff and mitigate stuff?
Yeah, like I've actually got the blog post up here from April 1st, which we talked about before, which was our last show when we got Zoom bombed. That was fun. But they really responded well. I mean, and what it's going to mean for them, they stopped all current work on future features. So they had basically a lock on all future features and all feature enhancements, and just work to basically make the system better, make it more secure, increase the password. They effectively have accelerated their development to a platform, to a point where they might have been without this maybe in a year or two. So they're better for it by a mile. And what that also means is that competitors need to catch up as well. Microsoft Teams, as an example, has to catch up. Teams has to go and try and get more screen, has to get more videos in there, and they're responding to that, and they released a background update. So that's the sort of technology acceleration, and people are being, and companies are being dragged into it because they have to.
And that's about market driven.
Zoom's a great example.
You don't have to go to the factory to build a piece of software. You can do
do it at home where we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes as well, people are a bit too quick to jump on the criticism bandwagon. You look at some of the issues Zoom had early on, and we obviously experienced it with Zoom bombing, but how 3-4 months ago did anyone ever expect Zoom bombing to be a thing?
To be a verb.
It's like the fact that nobody would have ever imagined that people would have had that much time on their hands for a start to be interested in diving into our Zoom meeting. So there is a certain amount of reactiveness to it as well that comes with it. And I think situations drive innovation as well.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
There's a lot of things you can't predict in the world. Nobody predicted the global economy and all these countries would all be shut down. We'd all be locked down at home and we'd all stay at home. Even when it happened in China, I remember having conversation with people saying that'll never happen in America.
Yeah.
And then
it's
here we are,
you kind of galvanize your priorities in a different way, right? And that's part of what you're all saying. There's sort of this now collective focus. So in the Zoom example or the Microsoft Teams example, right, they, as organizations or as product, entities, they said, we're going to just laser focus as fast as we can and, improve this customer experience. We're going to react to the market very quickly. And that's what's been kind of beautiful to see in some of the examples you mentioned, Anthony and Melissa, that everyday human beings are doing the same thing. They are deprioritizing some things. 3-4 months ago, if Starbucks got your cappuccino wrong, that was an upsetting day. Now that just does not matter. And I'm going to actually not think inwardly. I'm going to focus about what can I do to help someone else. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, and I think I just listened to a podcast. So this isn't my original idea, but I'm kind of rolling with it now. Is that I think a lot of businesses believed, a lot of people thought they were recession-proof. But being recession-proof doesn't mean that you're pandemic-proof. And that's a big realization. They used, I heard an example of a barber. A barber in the street would go, no worries, recession, everyone needs haircuts. But when when certain populations are locked down, no one's getting haircuts.
Everyone needs one, we just can't have one.
Yeah, and another example is the cinema industry, the box office. Like, I think this time last year, from what I just heard, the US box office took about $250 million in the week. This week, they took 5,000. So that's a huge dent to them. But what that means moving forward is now they have to really think about how they structure their whole business after this, because people have become so used to this, just getting Netflix, getting all sorts of other streaming services, Disney Plus. That's the new normal now. So that's what people are going to get used to. So do people need to go and pay $30 for a movie ticket nowadays, especially with technology at home that we've got? We've got massive home theaters. Why do we go to movies? I mean, there's a certain element of experience that you still get nostalgically, but the younger generation, this might be the killer for that. So, cinemas probably won't die because I think they're still intrinsically part of our culture. but they're going to have to do some really weird things and some big things, some pivotal things to actually drag people back. So that's an example, I think, of some of them being dragged into the next century quicker instead of just being a blockbuster.
Yeah, and I think what you're pointing to is that it's an acceleration of trends. I know I'm a fan of American football, the NFL, and there was concerns along the same type of notion there. Yep, there you go. You've got your Texas T-shirt. So, the NFL worried about, to your point, people have these large home theater systems. The idea of getting in a car, traveling for hours, standing in line to get into a place, and then watching something live and then doing that in reverse. That's a all-day event, literally, versus I buy my NFL, package on my super television. I get my food whenever I want, etc. So, I know one of the more recent football stadiums put a lot of technology into the stadium in Santa Clara, basically the San Francisco 49ers, to have better experience, order food right from your seat. And that was before all of this. I don't know what the situation's like where you guys live, but every time I take the trash out of the recycle, everybody has these boxes of huge things that have come from Amazon or whomever, right? Of upgrading home labs, upgrading, your home theater, etc.
I think a lot of us have spent money in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
I would say as well, though, like one of my fears is that things change too much. So you're talking about like the football games. Well, football in the UK, like you watch the Premier League, you go to like my home team, Middlesbrough, and it's like, you watch it on TV and it's great. It's 90 minutes. You sit there, you have some commentary, you watch a couple of football guys at the end talk about why they lost or why they won. But when you go to a stadium and there's 30, 40, 50,000 people, atmosphere. And it's unbelievable. And you can't capture that with a TV. So my worry is that some of this will change. And, and even like virtual reality and that kind of thing, I just don't think the virtual stuff is a massive replacement. Like we do this kind of thing and it's great. I get to talk to you, Anthony, in Australia, and Dave, you're out in Arizona, and Melissa's in New Jersey. But I would much rather be sat around a table with in-person interaction than looking at you on my very nice Apple computer screen.
Melissa,
I have to agree with you because, everybody, we just use the example, everybody's buying everything off of Amazon. Me and my mom keep on talking about what is the first store we're going to go to when everything's over and what do we want to buy? Because, there's all these little things around the house. Like I really want a new coffee mug. I want a couple new frying pans. I could go online and buy them right now, sure. But I personally kind of want to go back the other way now and go to a store and pick out the things and touch them.
So you've gone opposite. You're yearning for that experience again.
I went to Home Depot the other day, and it was the most amazing experience of my life to be outside of the house in somewhere else. It was phenomenal.
Well, my husband had to go to Home Depot to buy something we needed for the house last week, and he waited in line outside for an hour before. So, it's still, I'm in New Jersey, right? So hot spot, things are a little messed up here. But like, I kind of swing back the other way. I don't want to buy the stuff online, even like, toys for my kids or whatever. I want to take my son to the toy store when this is all over. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Dave, what do you want to say there?
Well, I just resonate with what Melissa's saying. I mean, there's certain things like we may not go back. Our grocery store that we frequent the most is literally straight down the street, 1.5 miles. But we've gotten to ordering from home now, and I can just put that order in. We write on the whiteboard whatever we need. It's very easy. I may not change that, at least for many things. But then I totally agree with what Melissa's saying. There's certain little knickknacks. Like, I don't know if I can go online and find a space-themed coffee mug, but I want to go and see that specialty item. Not for everything. So I think this change of priorities might be certain things that are a matter of convenience may forever be altered for some of us. But that sort of human interaction need and the idea of having that special item and wanting to go, that's part of the fun, is going to find it yourself and experience that.
Yeah.
Well, how many times as well have you gone in a store and bought something that frankly you really didn't need but was really cool, and you bought it just because you happened to walk by it?
Is that an impulse buy? That's called an impulse buy, isn't it? My dad warned me about that very early on. And so he was an accountant. So, he warned me about impulse buying. might have impulse bought some things earlier off eBay. Anyways, so I wanted to switch it to talk about a sort of more global sense. One of the amazing things that has come out of this situation with people being a little bit more locked down and emissions down is that the world's kind of taken a bit of a breath, right? And air pollution's dropped and all that kind of stuff. So apart from the green element, which is obviously, which is okay, I guess. But I try to think of it from a technology point of view. What does it mean moving forward? What does it mean for Tesla, for electric cars? It's obviously been almost unequivocally proven that if people stop driving and stop emitting, that the world rights itself fairly quickly. So I think what's going to happen is that people like Elon are going to be very happy over the next 5 to 10 years, because I think the acceleration...
Who's going to have the money to buy a Tesla after this, Anthony?
Well, the thing is, they'll have to drop it down. They'll have to drop the prices down. I mean, that's what will happen, right? Like, people will adjust. I don't even know if they really have to, but...
The oil price drops very good for me. It's only costing me $30 now to fill up my 5.3 litre V8 pickup truck. So...
Well, that's the other side of it, isn't it? I mean, that is a interesting political sort of situation as well in terms of how that's traveling. But if we keep it on the line of the technology, that was all we were all promised. Are we going to go down the path that we're still going down, or are we going to hit something more like what was? I always use Demolition Man. For anyone who has seen Demolition Man, they know what they're talking about. I still don't know what the Three Shells was all about, but it's quite interesting. And then they had some very interesting virtual reality situations in that movie as well, if you guys remember that.
The problem with it is as well, though, is the thing that I always think drives it is if consumers have to change behavior, then it's always going to be a challenge. And I've always thought, so I think electric cars are brilliant. I'd love a Tesla if I could afford one. But, the fact is that if you, certainly in America, because people still drive from coast to coast in America, you can't do that practically in an electric car. Even with the superchargers, you've got to pull over, you've got to
How long do you have
sit
to stop?
there,
Like
you've
at
got
least
to wait.
20 minutes to supercharge, right?
Yeah, whereas people drive 600-900 miles pretty much non-stop in America. They stop at a gas station. 2 minutes later, they change drivers and they go again.
So what does that mean? Collectively then, the electric car industry, we're not just talking about Tesla, we're talking about all of them, have to get better at what they're doing. They have to accelerate their technology. It's technology acceleration, because there will be a certain...
But who says electric is even the way to go when you think about it? Something may come out of all of this that changes that. Hydro-powered
car,
Yeah,
I had that thought ages ago. I should have paid.
Yeah, when you look at the hydrogen stuff, it's the same behavior, just a different fuel type.
Or uranium.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I want like nuclear-powered pickup truck.
Hey, Melissa would love this analogy, but it was okay for Cassini. Cassini was uranium-powered.
Yeah, but I'm not sitting on Cassini driving.
Yeah, it was half and half, and was using the swing as well.
No, I wouldn't mind a nuclear-powered dirt bike. But if
the technology is clean enough and safe enough, it'll happen, right? Like. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading on singularity, which is a very interesting topic. It's machine intelligence when computers reach a level of human level of intelligence, and again, Terminator and all that kind of stuff comes into play, right? But Ray Kurzweil, I think is his name.
Kurzweil, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very famous futurist, and he's got a very high percentage of accuracy in terms of what he predicts in the future. I think he's actually working as a head futurist at Google now, I think, as well. That's what he does, I think. But he kind of predicted that, computers will reach a level of singularity, not total singularity, by the end of this decade, so 2029. And he reckons that they'll reach total singularity by the 2040s, so 2045, 2046, which is quite interesting in itself. Now, what does a situation like this do to that? Does it accelerate that? Because at the start of this decade, all of us were talking about, I think we all did it, Dave did it, I think I did it, what's our predictions for 2020 and beyond? And an interesting thing would us to be go back to that and now reassess and now go, because of this 2020 hasn't gone anywhere near what anyone thought, right? What does it change about our predictions? That's quite an interesting thing to maybe revisit in a couple of months.
The only thing this taught me was my predictions completely way off the mark, and I have no predictions. If I could have predicted this, I think I would have shorted a lot of the airline stocks for a start, and yeah, pretty much everything. But predictions.
You're talking about a sports almanac there situation, a Back to the Future sports almanac. That's what you're talking about.
But you can't. I don't know. For me, I personally, like, I know I can be classed as a bit of a doom-monger at times. But
never.
I'm always positive about everything. Just my Northern British occasionally comes out, and the world can be a bit rubbish. But when you think about the just computers and technology having the same level of intelligence as us and ability to grow and learn and self-teach itself, I actually think that's pretty frightening.
It is frightening. Yeah, it's frightening.
It's how we get Skynet.
It's how you get
well, yeah, it's, it's that kind of thing that you just take it as the perfect example of, like, war games. One of my all-time favorite.
God, we're so high on the pop culture references today, aren't we?
I know. But replacing that human person who has to turn a key and hit a button to go and destroy the world with an artificial intelligent computer just is petrifying.
But in war games, it couldn't.
Age of Ultron?
But it couldn't beat itself in war games. It couldn't beat itself. Tic-tac-toe was a draw all the time. It was. Yeah, so it couldn't work it out.
But how many years later, how much smarter would that AI be, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I bet Whopper 9.0 would be, like, a bit more advanced with tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, he wouldn't have to do the modem dial-up and put it down on the phone.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
10-minute warning. We love those. Actually, so interestingly enough, another thing that Zoom's been doing, and we've seen this in a couple of our own team meetings, they've been randomly basically just extending meetings to unlimited, which is interesting. I wonder what the criteria must be. I've got a feeling it's number of people, because we've done it in our last two big meetings where we've had more than, I think, 10 people on or whatever it is, and maybe that's a baseline they use from. And again, that's something that they've innovated on and built into their system in the last couple of weeks. It's crazy, right? But it's just,
maybe they listen to your conversation, decide if it should go on or not.
That's where the AI comes into play.
They're scared about singularity.
I just find it easier to log in with my Veeam account, and then it's included in the Veeam subscription. So
that's what we do. I think that's what I do as well.
And then it's unlimited.
But I don't know if we do have an unlimited subscription.
Yeah, you can log in. I used it the other day, worked perfectly.
There you go.
Your technology comment, though, Anthony, is interesting in terms of, like, what changes from now. What would we revisit, say, January 1st of this year, if we could? And I sort of see this bi-directional notion, meaning we're going to be in run mode. If you think of run, grow, transform the business, it's going to be pretty low on the hierarchy, Maslow's, needs hierarchy of just trying to sustain yourself, either as individuals or businesses. So some of that suggests that we're not going to be purchasing a lot of new infrastructure. We're going to, just like 2007 and 2008 macroeconomic issues forced organizations to keep gear in place longer, defer certain other items.
Yeah.
So there's part of that that's just kind of a hang on. The other path of this is, though, yeah, but hang on is basically just kicking the can down the road. At the point you think you can do something different, something transformational, you might rethink your cloud strategy. You might really make a bet on digital transformation to try to win the hearts and minds of customers. You might go harder on repivoting the business. So it'll be curious to see how everyone responds from an IT perspective. I'll say one last thing, Veeam, we've been incredibly lucky. We had an incredibly strong first calendar quarter of this year. And part of that is the nature of software. Part of that is being easy to transact with and having an economic model that allows that to be more sustainable. But 6 months from now, organizations are going to have to make some really hard choices. And it's going to be, I guess, interesting, to say it mildly, how that all plays out.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about 2008, the GFC. I mean, I think we've talked about this maybe in the first episode in a way, but it was more about actually the event. But in terms of a technology acceleration, I fully believe that 2008, the GFC accelerated SaaS massively. Because I back then I worked in still my first company. We hosted Microsoft Exchange and SharePoint CRM websites, and back then before Office 365 came, that was kind of what happened. So we were busy during 2008-9 because people were deferring, like you said, Dave, they were deferring their capital expenditure. They couldn't afford to buy a new small business server as it was back then. And they had to go and do an OPEX month by month situation. And that drove, I think if you actually took a look back in 2008 and see where software as a service really took off, it was after that, because I think Salesforce, Office 365, a lot of these companies skyrocketed after that because they needed a different way to economically run their business moving forward. Even VMware, I think, when you think about VMware, that their boom time was after 2008. All these sort of technology companies that grew out of 2008. I think I mentioned it before, I've been listening to the Acquired FM podcast. I listened to the Uber one recently, which was fascinating in terms of where they came from. They've got a really interesting history. I'd encourage everyone to look up and actually listen to the Acquired FM podcast on Uber, because there's all sorts of crazy stuff that went on. That company was founded in craziness. But suffice to say, a lot of those startups started in the ashes of that. So the one thing that I can hope for out of this, when we all come out the other side, is that there's going to be another boom in technology in startups, because people will think differently. They have to do things differently. There'll be new markets that open. There'll be new ways to do business. So I think it's going to drive a significant technological advancement. And, where we probably were going to get to 2030, talking 10 years, it's a long way away. I would say the decade of technology compresses into maybe 5 years instead of 10 years. If I'm being real ultra positive out of this situation, I think that's what happens. Where we were going to be in 2030, we're actually going to be there in 2025. I don't know what that means from a technology point of view, but we'll know it when we get there. I think that's what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years. What do you guys reckon, just to finish off?
Yeah, I'm so from a business perspective, like touching on what Dave was saying, over the next 6 months, I'm kind of hoping that from just a pure economics play, all the intervention of all these governments around the world financially, we're going to come out of this a lot quicker than, say, what happened 2008, 2009. There's going to be a lot of people kept in employment. So hopefully people will still have a little bit of ability to spend money, and then economically we can grow. So then my hope is, from a technology business, enterprises especially will still be able to invest in the projects that they had planned for this year. It just may be that they're pushing that down the road to 2021. That's certainly my hope. So, yeah.
Melissa, what do you reckon? Or you don't reckon?
The way you say that, Anthony, it's very serious. Here's something kind of, I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I'm going to throw out there a little different. When we think about BCDR, business continuity, disaster recovery, we usually focus on the DR, right? The failover, the switch, and all that stuff. This wasn't a disaster exercise. This was a continuity exercise. Yeah. So I think a lot of companies are seeing that maybe they did not have the best business continuity plans, and I think we're going to see investments. And a business continuity investment is not a hard investment as a DR one, right? You can't buy hardware for business continuity unless you're talking about expanding VPN capability and stuff like that, right? You don't buy a piece of BC hardware, it's more processes and stuff like that. So I think we're going to see a lot of companies spending some more time in that arena, which is I
was having to think about it. So think about WeWork. Do they exist beyond this? Now that we've proven that everyone can work from home?
I'm desperate to get out of my house and into an office.
Yeah, it's a WeWork fan.
Yeah, WeWork fan.
Summer is coming. I don't even think my kids are going to go back to school, so they're essentially going to be off school for 6 months. They will.
Didn't I see you put one of your children up for sale on eBay, David? Is that right?
I've put them both up for sale.
Yeah.
So they're both for sale. If you want terrible children who don't know how to behave and all they do is eat your food, they're free to a good home.
I think that's all kids. But yeah, but just to finish off, we've got like a minute and 50 seconds left. But I think that was a really good point, Melissa. I think companies, it's been proven that they knew a little bit about DR, but business continuity, no. It's been a scramble. I know even government organizations here which are managing the crisis that have been forced to keep their workers at home because they have got no BC, they've got no capability to work remotely, and that's kind of scary in itself. But that's what I mean. And but this won't happen again for them. Then they're going to be prepared. They're going to be pulled. Technology acceleration, they'll be pulled into making sure that if it happens again, they will be ready. That's a positive in itself. Dave, have you got anything to finish off?
Yeah, well, I like where Melissa went. I think moving the bits, protecting the bits is one thing, but the BC side of it, we saw this in the United States after 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina or the tsunami in Japan, etc. These horrible events force organizations to face up to the fact that something that they haven't done from a communication and planning perspective isn't a luxury item anymore. And it's horrible that those things happen. But if there's a silver lining, it's that you get better, just like Zoom got better, and it got better really fast. And I think every organization is going to have to readdress how they handle this.
Yeah, that's really good. Getting better. And this is to tie it up and to finish it. That's what David was saying, right? The world has pulled together like never before, almost working jointly on vaccines and everything to get better. And I think after, some people will unfortunately suffer, but I think out of this, holistically, we're going to get better. Technology will get better. We're going to pivot quicker. So yeah, I think it's a really good time, and I'm really excited about where it's actually going. So yeah, I think we've got about 10 seconds left. We never know when it's going to finish. This is the fun part of the